to get a ton of questions.
Folks, this is House Corrections and Institutions Committee. It is Friday, February 20th. So we're here this morning a little bit after 10 o'clock with the Department of Buildings and General Services to continue going over their FY27 general fund budget. So I'm assuming it's Emily, Deputy Commissioner. Come on up. And we got this document from previous.
Yeah.
And we are starting, and then of course we have these questions that 5 members of our committee came up with, possibly asked. And we left off at surplus property. Okay, that's where we left off. And I know that you folks, Cole had sent a whole explanation of your fleet program. This could take up 2 hours for the conversation, I think, with some folks.
Yes. That was, I knew you had said you might want us to come back, but I had also taken note of some of the questions that were asked. So we thought we'd just send along responses to some of what we'd heard in questions.
Let's continue with where we left off with the surplus property and see what time it is, because people are concerned about the time.
Okay.
Oh, particularly me. So it's all yours, Emily. If you could introduce yourself for the record.
Sure. Happy Friday. I am Emily Kosicki, Deputy Commissioner of Buildings and General Services. I will dive right in. Surplus property. This is a combination of function for state and federal surplus. This is a really small unit based in Middlesex. They really exist to dispose of excess property, and then the money is returned for state operations. They also attempt to increase reuse of equipment and conserve acquisition and disposal costs with managing surplus property. So from a budgetary perspective, just a 3% increase in the governor's recommend for the state surplus budget based on personnel costs that we've talked about through the previous units that we went through previously, 3 FTEs in this program. Any questions on state surplus, or I can move right along to, there isn't a separate breakout for federal, but it's a similar, same staff, same program. It's just when they take federal surplus property and dispose of it.
So you're on surplus property?
Yeah.
Okay, because the screen up there is something different right now. Something happened there. Cole's not awake.
That's page, okay, that's where we just were.
Or else they're too awake. Connor.
Yeah, sure. Like, we just out of curiosity, we don't have any like trailers and surplus at the moment, right? For like some temporary purchases. I knew like the Middlesex, like if we decommission those would go to surplus, but there's nothing in there now that like.
Not off the top of my head that I'm aware of. Usually, I know sometimes they come through and we help deal with disposition of trailers, but I'm not aware of anything at the moment.
Okay.
I can look it up and.
Yeah, I mean, just to be totally transparent, we were looking at maybe some increased space for corrections for folks to meet with lawyers. So I was just wondering if that would be maybe a place we'd look first.
Okay, I don't think so, but I will verify.
Okay. Thanks.
So this may be new to a lot of folks here. So could you just explain some of what you see as items that come through surplus property?
Yeah, I mean, the classic example that I think of is office furniture. Someone's moving out of a space or upfitting a space, and they have all these old desk chairs that they don't want anymore. It'll go through surplus property, but there are many, many other types of things that'll go through there. For example, collecting sharps from the airport. That's a very popular thing that surplus does, is we'll collect sharps from the Leahy Airport, and we'll sell those through an agreement with the federal program. Also, vehicles, surplus from fleet can go through there, or even like AOT vehicles. Sometimes that's a popular auction that's held. So it's really a wide range of material that they deal with.
And state police vehicles as well.
I believe so. Yeah.
So who bids on these? Who has access to purchasing this property?
The public. And it can depend again on what the item is and whether it's an auction or whether it's visiting our warehouse in the case of furniture, or we do sometimes partner for an online auction. Auctions International is the partner that we work with. And we'll put some of those like higher dollar or sort of rare or niche items might go through that route.
That might be something you just want to keep in the back of your mind if you know of an organization back home or municipality that's looking for certain items to also check surplus property. Because, and even us as individual folks, we can check and see what you might be able to find.
Yep.
Sharp.
Hmm?
What is a sharp?
It's when at airports that they're pulling out like jackknives and
Oh, but
knives or scissors or things
Gotcha.
like that.
confiscated. material. Okay, gotcha.
Exactly.
I was like,
is there a slide that shows what the revenues are for the surplus property?
Not in this, not in the operating budget presentation.
But that's fine, that's great.
Okay. All right, basic purchasing and contracting. This is the office that oversees purchasing and contracting for the state. Really through management and compliance requirements that are dictated by statute and administrative bulletins, particularly bulletin 3.5, which you might be familiar with.
Explain what that is. Because we have so many new people here. They probably haven't heard of Bulletin 3.5.
At a very high level, it is a document that outlines requirements for how we purchase products and contract for services for the state.
You have to go out to bid.
Essentially, you have to go out to bid. There's requirements on how the contract process flows. All of that, it's very prescribed. And really, it's to ensure that state monies are spent appropriately and wisely, and that procedures are being followed so that it can be audited, et cetera, through the process. So Office of Purchasing and Contracting, we call it OPC, really is that centralized purchasing function that brings their expertise to the process. Although, especially for the larger agencies and departments, they also have certain delegated purchasing authority and work really closely with our team as needed.
So when an entity wants to, like, I'm just going to use a DOC with WellPath, that's a contract. They have to abide by Bulletin 3.5 when they go out to bid. And when they are ready to go out to bid for a new healthcare provider and DOC, do they work through BGS to do the bidding process, or are they on their own with that?
Generally, they would work through BGS.
So most contracting that's done, like if there was a department that, well, I don't think I want to use that example because then you have to get ADS involved. I was thinking of updating their Wi-Fi or internet or their IT system and all of that. They would have to go through ADS as well. But what are some of the contracts that go through BGS through Bulletin 3.5?
So there are very, very many. And just to share, some of them are statewide contracts, which means that they can be used by any agency or department in the state. And many of them are also available to municipalities. So that's, again, part of the goal is to bring efficiency through combined purchasing power and also help municipalities so that they can access our contract terms as well. Just one example could be salt. That's one that, there's been some issues with supply this year, but salt contracts run through BGS. That's something we develop in close partnership with the Agency of Transportation. Accessibility services like for website, accessibility issues for ADA, like coming up into compliance. Translation services would be another example. Commodities generally, like uniforms or work shoes, like our team uses those. So it's really a wide range of, if you can buy it, if it's something that state government needs to buy or contract for, it can flow through the Bulletin 3.5 process.
So like, like water bottles, Vermont Pure, in a DCF office, or like a secure shred, does that all go through BGS, or like with the department's contract individually on that type of stuff?
Generally, it would flow through BGS. Like there can be for like smaller purchasing that they can do on their own purchasing authority. Like if you're going to go out and buy a case of water or something like that
Right,
would flow
yeah.
through BGS. But if it's an ongoing contract, that would typically be held by BGS.
It's a big shop, yeah.
It is, yeah.
It's more than BGS. What about a contract for telecommunications within DOC? Would that go through you, or is that just going to be through DOC?
Generally, that would go through us. I'm going to follow up with more specifics. It can get complicated when there is a technical component and when ADS has a role in the process. Yeah.
So I think initially what we would think of purchasing in contract being the committee that deals with the capital budget. You think the only contracts that will be going through this part of the Department of BGS would be the contracts for construction work for our projects. And that's not that. It's for all of state government. So that's why it's really important for folks to understand that BGS is more than building buildings and mowing lawns.
OPC does also help with those contracts.
A lot of people will call it buildings and grounds.
Yeah.
Yes, they do. Yes. Right, but the Office of Purchasing and Contracting, those are, procurement professionals. Our Director of Purchasing and Contracting, Deb Demore, for the past year, she served as president of NASPO, which is the National Association of State Procurement Officials, which is a huge honor for Vermont to have a leadership role at a national level. And there are also cooperative purchasing agreements through that organization where, similar to the concept of us having statewide contracts that are available to municipalities, NASPO strives to get almost national contracts, again, for that combined purchasing power for the states that we can access. So it's a really great organization that our office has been able to have a really active role in, which is very helpful for us. 16 FTEs in the office. The governor's recommend is about 3.4 million, which is a 10.3 increase. This again is personnel costs as well as like we had talked about last time I was here, just a shift in timing for how we are funding existing positions. So previously, some of the positions were funded on the back end through an excess receipt, whereas we are proposing to put it on the front end and really just build it into our budget on a forward-looking basis rather than funding it on the back end.
Since we're asking questions, I'd be curious of the 1,400 active contracts in 27. How many of them are competitive versus single source? Roughly.
Okay.
We don't do many single source contracts, do we?
That is not the default. I will follow.
Right, because Bulletin 3.5 wants to make
You want
sure,
competition, but how many you don't have competition on is what I'm trying to find out.
right, but Bulletin 3.5 is to ensure that you do not go to a single source. But there are times that no one bids on a contract. Then you go back out for an RFP and then you only have one bidder.
Or when it's so specialized or so critical that there's really only one appropriate contract. So I will follow up with you on that.
Did you say what does ISF stand for?
Internal Service Fund.
Right. And then what's the insurance you brought to those? Do the increases in insurance?
That is something we're seeing across the board for healthcare cost increase.
Oh, yeah.
Costs increase. And sometimes you have no control over cost increase.
BGS does not.
You gotta pay it.
I would imagine it's one of the active contracts.
Health insurance.
I mean. In your question.
Well, this is insurance for
Does
their staff.
For the 16.
The state doesn't contract for health services for employees?
Well, they do, but I think we're saying they don't have any control over the premium increases.
Understand, because you're saying single source again, but, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
The only control you have is riffing people, which is not something I'm advocating.
Planning and property management. This is the property management budget. This unit is overseen by Director Eric Pembroke. Their mission is to provide facilities management and oversight of our leases. So they also focus on space planning, space assignments and space move requests. So they really help support agencies and departments in taking a look at the space that they have, what changes, if they have an issue, like what can we do within the existing footprint to make it better, or if they need to make a move, we help them with that planning process, the move process, or if we need to lease space, they are essentially the leasing agents and work with landlords as the primary point of contact. And we hold the leases on behalf of the tenant, agency, or department. So the property management fund, essentially, when we have a lease, BGS will pay that cost directly out of this fund and then back charge the tenant, agency, or department. This governor's recommend is a roughly 1.9 million, which is a 9.3 increase. Again, these are personnel costs, and just like the previous slide, it's really a timing change of, instead of relying on a excess receipt on the back end, we are building it on a forward-looking basis into this budget, which we really think is a better practice.
So we have 89 active leases across the state. Has that increased much over the past few years, or are we staying pretty steady?
We are staying pretty steady with that.
And what activities would be in those lease buildings? Do you know? I mean, we're housing state employees, obviously.
It can range really. The primary example is typically going to be office space. So, National Life, this committee took a tour last year of that. That is leased office space. That is, an example of a large lease. There are examples of smaller ones, particularly in corners of the state where we might not have as much state-owned office presence, but we need a footprint for an agency or department who needs to be there, and we have leased space there. So that's the typical example. For more specialized functions, generally, we will look to have state-owned space. So for like a courthouse, really prefer to have state-owned space there for a variety of reasons. Hospital, similar concept.
And I know that we've done this in the past, and I think it's by statute as well, that if you have a concentration of lease space in a community, you have to balance out the cost of that versus the cost of owning a building. And sometimes the lease costs end up being so much higher that then you propose to consolidate all that into a state-owned building. And we have to, and by state statute, if you do that, then that state-owned building should really be targeted to be in the downtown of a municipality. And that's been in place for years. For that. So that's just kind of the process. When we closed down 108 Cherry, when we decided to sell that building, we had a lot of the Agency of Human Services direct client services in that building, and we had to move folks into lease space around Burlington when we did that.
Yes.
For a second.
So I just want to give some balance there for people to understand. some of the mechanics of leasing space.
Assuming the 5 FTEs are part of the 11 of the subsidy.
Yeah. And that's, yes, that's a good point to call out, is that the energy office, 5 FTEs are housed in property management. The energy office also, there are 2 project managers in design and construction that are focused on energy projects. So it's really 7 people that are spread out between 2 units. And the rest of the 11 FTEs are generally, again, space planners. We have a space architect, leasing agents. And also, I know I've shared with you before the space book and like the inventory that we talked about with respect to H50. This is the group that really does that analysis. They do the space book every year. They are really the experts on the state's land holdings. So that is this group. The Fee for Space program, this is really our biggest unit. This is operations and maintenance. So this is, again, sort of the meat of BGS's operations, where it's led by Director John Hebert. This is everything from, the custodians that you see in the buildings, folks working on the grounds, all the way up to skilled trades persons who take care of our buildings and make sure that they're running as they should be every day. This also includes our safety and security office, which you heard about in detail yesterday. So those 2 groups are included in the Fee for Space budget. And again, just to call out for BGS, this is our largest concentration of FTEs with over 228. And again, also, I forgot to include the curator. The curator's office is in Fee for Space as well. So safety and security, operations, maintenance, and the curator. So again, this group is really focusing on maintaining our 3 million plus square feet of state-owned building space in our grounds, and then providing that safe and secure, healthy working environment for state employees. So overall, the governor's recommend is about $41.5 million, which is a 5.3% increase over last year's budget. This is really driven by personnel costs, which we saw consistent with all of the units across BGS, as well as just an increase in the cost of maintaining our buildings. The costs have gone up. If we go in to do a repair, it's just costing more than it did in the past. And also, we've seen an increase in our utility costs as well.
Yeah, how is it calculated, Emily? I've never asked that. Like, is it just pure square footage? You put a cost to it? Or like, is a prison different than another space?
So Fee for Space is charged by district, and it is based on actual costs over 2 years. So we look back and say, what were the actual costs? And then we calculate a rate for that district based on what that actual cost was previously. And we do break out, prisons or correctional facilities are treated differently because their costs are just so different. So for example, the State House is part of our capital district. And so the way that we staff those is that there's a district facilities manager. You're right here in Montpelier, it's Jim DeSisto, who oversees the group of folks who are working in the facilities every day within the district. So again, it's a district model. Statewide is covered. Montpelier is the costliest district from a Fee for Space perspective, really just driven by the nature of the buildings here, the State House.
Great place to live, generally.
It is. Yes, but it's based on actual costs. And so the things that will go into the Fee for Space budget, again, including our operating costs, could be, for example, if there's a request from an agency or department for some paint, like that wouldn't go into our major maintenance bucket. That's going to come out of Fee for Space. So that would something that is something that would be absorbed by this budget. If there was a more significant renovation, we would look at, is it a structural need? Is it something that we're seeing from a maintenance perspective? Like that's where it might go over to major maintenance. And if it's something more cosmetic, like the agency and department is initiating on their own a space change, like that might be something that might go to their operating budget if approved.
But that's really helpful. I actually, been here a long time and never know. How does it work in like in the back end? Like just a question. So like every budget has the fee for space line in it for different departments and everything. Are they writing BGS like a check once a month, or is it all just handled like on the back end?
It is billed through FSD, the Financial Services Division, which is part of Agency of Administration. So they're the ones who really calculate and communicate the rate annually in collaboration with us. And
Gotcha.
that's a process. But it is a billing through FSD. I don't know all the details. of the
Yeah, no,
billing
it's really helpful.
process.
Yeah.
But generally that's how it works.
So would the state hospital and our secure residential as well be paying fee for space?
Yes.
And it all comes, for fee for space, that all comes out of that department's operating budget.
Correct.
The general fund is paying fee for space. And that fee for space amount goes to BGS. And then
Correct.
BGS pulls that money out to do just maintenance of the building, custodial, mowing the lawns, that type of thing. So the general fund, it's circular.
And provision of heat, everything building related. It's similar concept to paying rent in a private leased space. So it's really the tenant agency and department is paying rent through fee for space for the services and the space that they occupy. And generally speaking, we found that fee for space is more affordable depending on the lease than lease space.
And that's how you balance lease space versus state owned as well. That's another calculation in there. So there's so much hidden that actually happens within BGS that nobody even realized that BGS is a hub of state government operations. If you don't have BGS, you don't have the operations of the state. You really don't. And when we had to go through COVID, BGS was right at the forefront, trying to figure out how to continue delivering services to Vermonters through our state employees and our departments and agencies, because everybody was closed up.
It must have been brutal.
They worked all hands on deck.
So I wish I had gotten the number for the number of work orders. So you can see in the performance measures, the number of work orders completed on time. And we have a system called WIMS, which is, I wish I could remember the acronym, but it's essentially our platform for where folks can go in. And if there's something that they need BGS to fix or address in their office space, they can go in and put in a ticket. And it can range from, I want you to move my bookshelf to, there's a major problem with our HVAC, and so those are the things that the team, they triage every day, the work orders that come in and respond to them on a priority basis based on, the set time sensitivity of each request. But really, they're very busy. They strive to be friendly and responsive.
So I'm just curious, in FY25, the performance in terms of percent of work orders completed on time and preventive maintenance completed on time. Why were the numbers so low compared to 24 and what we're seeing so far in FY26? Do you know? Was there a shift? Was there loss of employees? Do you know anything?
I do know in some areas there were some hiring challenges, especially in the trades, specialized trades. I'd have to dig into a bit more on why that year in particular was a dip. I don't know the answer. I do know that there's been, a renewed focus on let's make sure we're responding to the tickets that come in and responding to them. So there's been a renewed focus on that. So we saw it kind of go back up. And we're hoping to be even more back to where we were previously in FY 27.
It's a dip from FY 24, so I just
Right.
wondered what's going on there.
It's only 1 year, so you would think it has to be something specific that caused that wasn't a long-term issue.
That we know.
Right.
So your whole fee for space for money that is really coming in. I mean, you're expending it, but you're also getting that money in as well. In a way, but you are expending this as 41.5 million. And your total budget is about 63.5. So this is the bulk of your general fund budget. It's providing the services to keep our buildings going. And you need people to do that because the buildings don't take care of themselves.
And again, security as well is part of this group. And again, we talked about that in detail yesterday, but similar concept. The buildings are running with operations and maintenance, and they're also safe and secure through the security function. So
this fee for space. You're getting a revenue coming in. Because it's an expense of all of our departments and agencies. It's fee for space, when you're looking at the general fund budget. Fee for space is an expense on all departments in state government. And that fee for space dollar amount those departments are paying, correct me if I'm wrong, goes into BGS. And then BGS expends that money to maintain our buildings and maintain maintenance that may need to be happening in that building, custodial, maybe minor upgrades to that building.
correct. And again, since it's based on actuals, we're not making revenue off of the other agencies and departments. If anything, like we try to get it as close as possible where the costs are going to be covered. What we can expect and plan for as best we can. And we try to get as close to that break-even point.
So that 41.5 million, in simple terms, real simple, is divided up among all of our departments and agencies paying in that amount of money for fiscal year 27. That's the target. Sorry,
The HOA in a housing complex. So what you pay in to maintain everything. Yes?
yeah, but it's all coming out of our general fund.
Right.
It all comes out of your base, your general, your big bill. It all comes, I'm just trying to connect. It's all coming out of the big bill. And that fee for space is included in the DCF operating budget. It's included in DOC's operating budget. It's included in, I would assume, AOT's operating budget, all of that. So whenever we're looking at those individual department budgets in the big bill, a part of their budget is paying for fee for space. Questions? That's a big chunk of money, 41.5. That's 2/3, 3/4 of your budget. Your overall budget's about 63 million.
Right. I mean, this is, again, where most of our employees are concentrated as well.
Okay.
That sums it up, divisions.
Well, we could get into fleet management if people wanted to, or we could really set up a time after we get through our crunch time to really do a deeper dive into that if people want. If whatever people are comfortable with.
If you do want to do a focus session, I could bring in our fleet manager, Stacy DeSisto. And we could really go through the details, or I'm happy to go through questions now.
I think it's worth a deeper dive, seems like there's enough interest in the committee with it, yeah.
It's fine with me. Might happen after town meeting. Are folks interested in doing that?
I thought what you gave us, the page and a half was excellent. I only have the one question about the utilization of electric vehicles versus old fashioned gas guzzlers. Do people like the electric or not? I mean, because we're mandating 75% of the new vehicles are electric or hybrid. And people want to drive them, that may be a change we have to make. That's the only reason. I thought it was a great report. Thank you.
I think what we've heard in the past, it depends what part of the state person's living in. And if it's more urban, they tend to use more of the electric in the hybrid. The more rural, they're not doing that. So the concentration of those vehicles is more in the urban areas.
I understand we hear that. If you've got any data on it, that would be great, but I don't know what to do.
I think it can be seasonal too, right? Like we discussed before, in winter conditions, where folks might have to travel back roads, they might prefer a sturdy vehicle like an SUV. And some of those can be hybrid as well. But you know, they might prefer not to take an EV.
I mean, not to belabor it, but if we should be mandating 50% instead of 75%, that's a change we can make that is better for everybody. But we don't know that if they're not being utilized, or if maybe everybody loves them. Maybe it should be 85%. I don't know, but we've mandated 75, so is that the right number is all I'm asking.
Right.
But I don't know, if it's a today thing, but it's not a today thing, but at some point, like when I'm at home looking at a rental fleet, you'll have a breakdown by each VIN number of utilization. So if you've got like, if I got a Toyota BZ-X4 and it's got 12% utilization, my overall fleet utilization might be 80%, but that particular model that car might just not be getting used. And so maybe, you know, that particular car isn't a good value for the state for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But you can't see that from
Right.
this, in which case maybe it should be disposed of before 6 years or 80,000 miles. So I strongly suspect there are some of those, but I don't even know if that's really a committee conversation. That might be a sidebar conversation.
Well, that's why, I mean, we can schedule some time after town meeting when we're not so into a crunch to really look into these numbers and the mechanism of the operating of the fleet system better. Because there are some questions, and I want to be respectful of that. Because everybody owns a car. So we all know stuff about a car.
But I mean, and in fair, this is literally what I've done for a living for
Right.
25 years.
Right. Some of us know it a little more than others. But
In some of those vehicles, right, are leased through an agency or department, so not in the motor pool. And that's where like they are leasing a specific vehicle. And so if the hybrid or EV is not going to work for their operations, like they will not choose that vehicle for a lease, right?
And then that's another question. So if whatever department, most of the vehicles involved are not actually in your motor pool is only 47 units.
Yeah.
Right. And then the other sample size is what, like 600 units or something like that,
Just about,
592. And I don't know if there's any visibility to the utilization of those vehicles, or maybe there's not, because maybe the agencies aren't keeping data, and maybe you'd only be able to look at the odometer readings to try to glean how they're being utilized.
Yeah, and we have the mileage, and we can generally if we needed to, through telematics, do some analysis on how they're being utilized.
I think you've gotten a feel for some of the questions that members have, so we'll schedule a more in-depth conversation on this after we get through our crunch time. Then you can bring in the respective folks that might be able to answer the questions more in depth, because they deal with it on a daily, to get into that minutia.
And then just before we leave there, in the maintenance, the actual vehicle maintenance, I suspect is outsourced. You just,
Where we work with garages.
yeah. And then maybe how that piece works as well, when we get to it.
Yeah, that'd be good. Anything else? Okay, thank you for adjusting your schedule quickly. First thing we knew, the floor wasn't gonna go long at all, so one bill we had was postponed, so that freed us up completely. So I want to thank you for adjusting your schedules. So
Thank you.
we're gonna be doing, just to give you a heads up, but we've got next week, Then we have town meeting week off, then we come back that following week. We'll be getting into the capital bill, probably more. It will be after town meeting break. For that, I was hoping to touch it a little bit towards the end of next week, but I don't think it's gonna work that way because we've got bills we need to get out that's not connected to BGS. So it'll be after town meeting that we'll start markup because I want to get the bill out. Gotta get it out by the middle of March, I would say. A month from now. That's only about 2 weeks after we get back. So that's kind of the thinking on this end, just to help you folks out. Because I'm sure once we start markup is when all the real questions will come in. And some of it will pertain to you and some will not. So just want to give you a heads up, and then after we finish our crunch, we can do the fleet management after town meeting.
Absolutely. Have a great weekend. I hope everyone travels safely.
Yeah, let's hope
Be better.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks. Thank you. Thank you. So I would say we are done for the week. We're still scheduling a lot for next week. Having some conversations on Monday. A Zoom meeting with the chair of approach, chair of House Judiciary, and Representative Squirrel to talk pretrial supervision and accountability docket. So hopefully, we're going to spend some time at the beginning of the week next week with pretrial supervision. Martin said, can't we just pass out that bill that they've worked on and rubber stamp it? And I said, nope. So, well, why? So, because we need to know where DOC is going to fit into this for their supervision. But don't they have that internally? I said, no, that's by statute in the pretrial supervision. So, we're gonna, what I'd like to do when we talk pretrial and we have PMP, have DOC here, I really want to get a handle around the number of folks that they're envisioning, how they're going to be spread out through the state, and what their role is. Is it going to be to be in the court that 1 day a week for the accountability docket? And when they're not there, would they be doing pretrial supervision? Or is it just for pretrial supervision? What's the plan from DOC? Because we need that before we can take any steps forward for that. Okay?
Do they know that's the question?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, Tate's working on that. And we got to get that resolved.
Cool.
And I want to know what the cash, what the, I don't want to say the cash, what the money is, because there's 1.3 million right now over 2 years. And I want to know what is encumbered and what is not, so that it continues into FY 27. And in FY 27, they're asking for 1.5 million total because the base is 1.3.
So they're asking for 200 increment.
And then 200 on top of that. So if they have anything left from the previous 1.3, might get added too. So we're working with appropriations for that flow of money.
You're so good at knowing where the money is. I don't understand why this is so it's not transparent. Why is this so elusive?
It's in the general fund.
Yeah.
It's in the big bill.
So we just don't have visibility to that?
We don't work with the big bill. That's appropriations committee. They work with the big state budget. We work with the bonded piece.
Right,
They work with the whole general fund and all the federal dollars and the operating costs.
right. But they just won't give us that information or?
Well, they know that we know it because when pretrial supervision was first putting, when we were doing the work here in this committee, we knew back then, 2 years ago, we knew there was a cost to it. And we knew that if we rolled it out all at once in the state, it was going to cost about 1.2, 1.3 million from testimony we received from DOC. And we knew just come, because you picked everything up to the building and appropriations, and particularly towards the end of the session, the money wasn't there in the appropriations bill at that time. And then it got put in during conference committee. You kind of picked it up by osmosis and people talking and Dick Sears and I talking, and then the chairs of appropriations talking. They said, okay, we're gonna find some money for this, and they found 660,000. We knew we couldn't carry that all out through the state at once. So the question is, that 660,000 is there every year unless you add more money to it, because that's your base. That's the base budget. So if you put 660,000 in FY25 in your base budget for a particular program, in the appropriations world, that means it's going to be in the next fiscal year, 650,000. That's your starting point. So in FY26, the current budget year, when the money was put in last year, they went 650,000 instead of 660. So for 2 fiscal years, right now, for pre-trial, we have 1.3 million. And that's all in the appropriations bill. So that's why we have liaisons, like Gina's for BGS, to work with Wayne to figure out the general fund budget. And Sean and Kevin work with Trevor to figure out the DOC budgets. And this pretrial supervision is part of the DOC budget, operating budget. And that's where you pick up that information. And then we looked at the list of, which I sent out to you folks. I do have it here, but I responded to it, so I don't know where I put it, if you have it. The letter from, you have it because I responded to it. The letter from appropriations in terms of those items in the appropriations bill, and we sent that out to you folks. It had the pilot projects, and it had the 200,000 for the 7 permanent employees. And that's what appropriations wanted us to weigh in on. So we know that there's 200,000 that the administration has proposed for the pretrial supervision program. And that's on top of what's already there automatically. And so that's how you kind of connect the dots.
Kevin, I don't know if it's relevant to your point, but like whenever I do the repo stuff on Thursday mornings with Troy and Mary, Scott can run a report that'll tell you, this line item has this much of a budget, this much has been spent or encumbered, but we don't know what they're intending to do with the remainder of it. And we need to hear a story basically, and they'll tell you how they're going to spend all that money over the course of the year, or they're not, you can take it back.
Right.
But I think that's the detail we're missing here, unless I'm speaking wrong.
That is the detail we're missing.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I'm just saying, it seems to me like somebody ought to have a spreadsheet. They can say, here's the spreadsheet, here's how much is 25, here's 26, proposing another 200. To me, it seems like that should be transparent. It should be similar to what we do with our 50 million every year.
But that's in the appropriations world. Well, it's in the appropriations.
If they're asking us to weigh in, they ought to tell us what we need to be weighing in on, and it seems like you're having to line up the dots rather than looking at the data. That to me, that's why I'm confused. It seems like that should be apparent. What was appropriated, what's being proposed, as opposed to us having to talk to Squirrel and say, how much are you willing to give us?
To your point, Kevin, that exists. We just don't have it. They didn't, it's not that nobody has it. We don't have it.
Who should we ask?
Appropriations. You've got Trevor, you can ask. That's why we have the liaisons.
And it's not that you're wrong that we shouldn't have it. It's
Right.
But I just wanted to reinforce it does exist.
Yeah.
It's just we at this level of the channel.
So Sweeney and I have failed at getting Squirrel to show us the spreadsheet that actually tells the story.
He's gonna show you the money.
I don't think,
Tell us that.
I don't think you failed. I just.
You're learning.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it that you failed, because I don't think you have.
No.
On every Thursday morning, Kevin, we're asking for a better story. It's like, you know, I know you tried to tell us. Tell me again.
You're never gonna
If
have.
you remember when Jay Johnson was here, I asked those budget
Yeah.
questions. I asked directly. She's the administration. She's the one that helped put the budget together. And I asked her directly in testimony. The 660 and the 650, is that your base? She didn't know. She couldn't answer that. I needed to know, is that your base or is that a one-time?
Yeah, your point.
And how much of
Should be
that is
common.
expected? And the 200,000,
Should be.
and the 200,000 that you're asking for, is that on top of your base or is it a one-time?
Not what
We
you're
didn't get
saying
an
makes
answer.
sense. I just can't believe we gotta keep asking a question. 2 weeks worth of.
Wow.
That's it.
Well, I got questions from last year that haven't been answered, you know, so.
And I'm not making excuses because I think it should be a lot more transparent.
Yeah, that's simple fact.
It's complicated. But I was remember, like, we might be dealing with one section of the budget and people were asking, are dealing with multiple sections. You know, so it is incumbent on us to ask and put the pressure on them. I mean, we all deal with stuff outside of here too that are, I mean, outside of this city, but the legislature, that we need information from, and we just have to hound people and they're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get it to you, I'm gonna get it to you.
I know, I understand how that works.
Yeah.
Trust me, I understand that.
And I think most of them are genuine. Now, I think some people we run into the world are just like, yeah, stonewall you. But I don't think that's real, you know, but who knows?
Well, the other thing too is the legislature, in terms of how our committees are structured,
Right.
is pretty siloed because you're there for the focus of a particular department you oversee or a particular entity, you know, issue you work with. I mean, Commerce Committee is in banking
Yep.
and insurance. We know nothing about banking and insurance. Agriculture is there with the Agency of Agriculture, and you know, Judiciary is talking about our judicial system. We're siloed in terms of our committees. That's why we have liaisons back and forth. And, you know, when just working on the driver's license, you know, I made sure that whatever we ended up with, that our House Transportation Committee is aware of what's going on so they don't get blindsided. The budget is, I mean, Appropriations Committee is working, they're always working, they're never on the floor. You can sit in their committee anytime. I wouldn't want to be on that committee.
And so if you guys are tired of listening to driver's licenses, I gotta
For me.
listen to an extra hour a day.
Yeah, we got that, yeah. So anything else before we finish
Oh,
up?
man.
Do I dare ask how it went, Ways and Means?
11-0.
Oh, they voted it out 11-0.
Nice
Really?
job.
So it'll be noticed on Tuesday and on the floor Wednesday.
Nice job, Troy.
You ready to present it?
Closer.
Scott did a great job. Scott was on there, and then corrections was great too.
Corrections was there
I
too?
think so.
Who was there for corrections?
Kristen and Haley, Kristen gave to us. And she had the same PowerPoint that she gave to her. They did a great job.
Did DOC support the bill at all?
They can't formally, but they indicated that there's plenty left to do for these staff.
There's plenty left.
Left to do for the staff members who are new, and plenty of good things for them to do when they're not focused on collecting these fees.
It's really taking a lot of time on their part. Great. Did they say anything that the bill would have to go to approves at all?
They did not.
Teddy was just asking me that.
They didn't indicate, yeah, I don't know.
That's what I was just talking to him about.
Yeah, may
'Cause
have,
he's gonna report for them.
may have to check with Betsy Ann, just to be sure. Maybe if you have time to do that before you leave,
I will.
check,
I will.
check with Betsy Ann. And I also talked to her about how you report it, so you can also talk with her about it.
Okay.
You
Sounds
do the
good.
bill and the amendment together.
I do.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're done. I want everybody to make sure you drive home safely. Some people have a long drive up over the hill. Other people are going north, which will be fine. Some
Yeah.
people going south. Be trouble. So I have a good weekend. We got one more week. We're really gonna push next week to get pre-trial supervision. Telecoms for DOC. I want to get the parole board bill out next week. And gender equity. Then we've got that whole substance use disorder treatment program thing that nobody knows what's going on with that.
Parole board is pretty much, it's left to do.
Yeah, we got another draft coming, and then we'll
That's right,
probably
right.
have a draft after that. Okay, because chances are there'll be a change. It's gonna incorporate the budgeting process that they talked about. and the pilot project for the legal. And I've got a question of DOC in terms of their budget, in terms of the staffing for their license plate shop. I don't want to forget that. I want to get that resolved next week too.
And then the revised detainee and sentence identification. We're done with until you talk to the Senate.
You mean for the driver's license?
Yes,
Yeah, I'm not voting that bill. It's ready to go
Yep.
on our end,
yes.
but I'm gonna wait to make sure that all the ducks are in a row in the Senate Transportation Committee, and they're not gonna change any of the language. Once I get that, which will be the middle of next week, then we can vote that bill.
Yeah, just confirming.
And then
Understand.
that will have to go to
Ways and means because. of
It has the word fee, which is 0. But it has the word fee, it's a fee of 0.
I understand.
That's an automatic trigger. So that's our work for next week. We're gonna be cramming. And be prepared if we have and I know we're working hard, but I'm really rather put in the work now than do it the week we get back from town meeting and working late into the night.
Yep.
If we have time after the floors are short, we have time, I want to come back and finish up if we can.
I know.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Cause I don't wanna, I've been here working in committee till 10 o'clock at night. It's not good.
Actually, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Oh, I've been here Friday night till 10.
Oh,
We've had a couple,
Mhm.
we've had a couple late nights.
Yeah. Yeah, it's dicey. I don't wanna do that, folks, or myself. So we're done for the week. We can get off of you